Is tourism possible outside the margin of sustainability? To ask this question, I invite to give here to the next moderator, Clara van der Poel, please. And Clara will introduce all the speakers for this high-level panel. Clara? Yes.
Thank you very much, Christina. It really is a pleasure to be here today, and thank you very much to the organizers for this opportunity to be here in beautiful Bilbao with all of you. So, Ms. Elena Manzanera just beautifully set the scene for us for this panel. And of course, tourism is a pillar of the national economy in Spain, and it is also a lifeline for many regions and local destinations. Ladies and gentlemen, tourism is also trade. It is the third largest export category after fuels and chemicals, and it amounts to roughly 4% of global GDP, which is a size similar to that of agriculture. Tourism is one of the world's main economic sectors, but not only. It also has the potential to uplift communities, to conserve our natural and cultural heritage, to contribute to cultural exchange and peace building, and to foster a fairer, more prosperous economy. Now, to harness the full potential of tourism for our societies and as a force for good, we must also harness the power of data. MST has, in fact, measuring the sustainability of tourism framework that Elena Manzanera beautifully introduced to us, has in fact been recognized by the UN Chief Executive's Board as a sectoral example for moving beyond GDP to value what counts. Now, today I have the pleasure of introducing a fantastic lineup of speakers in this panel on the sustainability of tourism. We will delve into the critical nexus between data integration and data governance for better informing on, in this case, tourism sustainability. And now tourism has, or can be considered a very nice case study for understanding this nexus, because tourism cuts across different data dimensions and different players across government entities, across different disciplines, and different spatial scales, right? From the national, international, all the way down to the regional and local levels. So it's a beautiful case study to explore this further with our speakers. Allow me to call each one of you up on stage. So we will have, first of all, Ms. Apolonija Oblak, Director General of the Slovenian National Statistical Office. We will also have Mr. Imam Machdi, Deputy Chief Statistician for Statistical Methodology and Information at BPS Statistics Indonesia. We will have then Ms. Kathrine Lindeskov Johansen, Chief Consultant of the Center for Regional and Tourism Research in Denmark. And of course, our dear Julio López Astor, Head of the Research and Knowledge Department at the National Tourism Office of Spain. Now, we're going to hear about each one of you, your work in this space, and your biggest challenge is going to be to keep to our time. You're going to have 5 minutes to begin with, and then we're going to proceed with a nice conversation amongst us. So let me start perhaps with you, Apolonija. Now, Apolonija has more than 20 years experience at the National Statistical Office of the Republic of Slovenia. You have touched upon many different fields, but I know that your heart is with tourism statistics. Apolonija is in fact a renowned tourism statistics expert, and she in fact is also very active internationally, chairing the OECD Working Party on Tourism Statistics, for example. So Apolonija, your office has been focusing recently on the acquisition of alternative data sources for official tourism statistics, and also on the development of a set of indicators on tourism sustainability. Please tell us a little bit more about this.
Thank you, Clara. Thank you for this very nice introduction. When Elena was explaining, how much tourism contributes, in Spain, of course, Slovenia is at the global level, like 4% of the GDP. But Slovenia is green, small, cute, And we were thinking how to support the goals of tourism in Slovenia via official statistics, like very solid, robust, quality statistics. And we don't have a lot of stuff to work on it. We don't have the budget. We have never bought the data. So this is the environment in which we are trying to do our best to support our users. And luckily, we have a very long history on using of administrative sources. We are still building on that, still producing new indicators. But at the same time, we have had a look of the alternative big unstructured data, how we can better support our users with new data sources. So I will, in a few minutes, just show you what we are doing, maybe then to elaborate further in the discussion. So in Slovenia, although we are small, the percentage of GDP from tourism is small, we are running 4 tourism-specific surveys. It's, of course, on accommodation, arrivals and overnight stays. We have the survey on domestic population, travels of domestic population, also 2 very big surveys on foreign travelers and foreign tourists every 4 or 5 years, and also a survey among Slovenian agencies. On the top of that, we are already more than a decade producing tourism satellite accounts. We are very proud of that. And recently, we have been exploring these administrative sources, how to better show what's going on in the employment sphere. So we have produced new indicators on tourism-related employment, and we have various data on accommodation and food service activities, producing wages, how many businesses, electricity consumption, greenhouse gas emissions, and so on. But we wanted to go further. And although we have already great results from what we are doing on monthly, quarterly basis, we have explored several alternative data sources. They are not so much alternative for us anymore because we are already publishing experimental statistics out of these new sources, and we use them especially to address the needs of users when it comes to periodicity, granularity, timeliness, and also new statistics to highlight what is going on in the domain of tourism. I will just show you very briefly what kind of experimental statistics we are already publishing out of these data sources. Okay, so this is one example how you can exploit even further administrative sources. In Slovenia, we have a very good register of accommodation establishment with full coverage and with daily data on all registrations of guests in the accommodation facilities. So we have recently launched this portal where we are publishing near real-time data with only 3 days delay on all the guests. And what is very important is that the concept, that the methodology is just the same as in monthly data statistics on accommodation. So it's very understandable to the users who is guest, what is arrival, accommodation establishments, and we are publishing this data down to the municipal level. Of course, we are taking into account the statistical confidentiality, so not all municipalities are there because municipalities in Slovenia are very small, but it's a very good tool. The thing is as well that we are also publishing this daily data in our SISTA database, which means that through machines can read this data and use them in the models for nowcasting or forecasting of the flows. So this is the first example how you can further exploit the administrative source. And now I will move to alternative sources. The first one is that we are already quarterly publishing data from the MNOs. It's on roaming data, and it's true for the Slovenes going abroad and foreigners coming to Slovenia. So it's already published quarterly, and we define the methodology, and these data are very much appreciated among our users. The next example is is the data that we receive from Eurostat. We have decided that we will publish data that Eurostat provides to the countries who have signed a non-disclosure agreement from the 4 biggest short-term rentals platforms. In Slovenian case, this is, I would say, an additional layer to what we have because we have a full coverage. So all rooms, apartments are already in our counter and monthly statistics. But this is additional layer. So what is published also online, like on booking.com, Airbnb, and so on. I don't want to do commercial to those platforms, but just to explain what I'm talking about. And the next thing is as well, we have very good sources also in the domain of traffic. So we have decided also to publish quarterly data from the passenger vehicle traffics, because also these data are an input to the models. So, and they're very much appreciated because Slovenia, we travel mainly on our roads because the public transportation is rather weak. So these data are very appreciated by our users. And to conclude, so we, of course, want to support as best as we can our policies and our users, and we have a lot of work to do. And on the other side, we need to be very careful with the resources that we are using for it, because it only contributes 4% of GDP to the GDP, so we are not very popular. But that means that we need to search what kind of other sources we can use to supplement especially those surveys which are very costly and consumes a lot of human resources. This is the case of survey on foreign travelers and foreign tourists. And we already have data on payment card transaction data. We will be combining with MNO data. This is work in progress, but I hope by the end of 2004 we will have good outcomes. We are also working on a project how to link smart electricity meters and water meters to the accommodation establishments, so that we will have exact information how much water was consumed in accommodation establishments. We have this data aggregated for the accommodation and food services, but not yet for the accommodation establishments. And same is true for the water meters. We have also built, the university in Slovenia has built the model for measuring tourism carbon footprint, but we would like to add this also in our official statistics. And to be able to do that, we need some more work. We need to find some more good incoming sources that we will be sure what is in there, that we will have all the methodology very clearly defined, that the users will know what they will get when using this kind of data. And our ultimate goal is to have, also looking at the MST, a comprehensive set of indicators to measure sustainability dimension of tourism in Slovenia. My message would be, although if you don't have finances, staff, be brave, go ahead, build on what you have, but stay focused on what you are doing, you know? So it's good to combine also your work with what academia is doing, and then you start with small experimental statistics, build methodology, and have something comparable over time and territory. I hope I was not too long.
Yeah. Beautiful, Apolonija. Thank you very much for that. Be brave, be creative with different data sources. And this leads us then to Mr. Imam Machdi. So your responsibilities at BPS Statistics Indonesia include to serve statistical methodology, data governance, big data, and statistical infrastructures to both Statistics Indonesia and other statistical producers within the national statistical system. And before this, you were in fact Director for National Digital Government Policy at the Ministry of Administrative and Bureaucratic Reform. So a very apt CV indeed, Imam, to tell us about Indonesia's work on introducing mobile positioning data as one of the first countries to do so, in fact, in the area of tourism statistics.
Okay, thank you, Clara, for introducing me. Also, thank you for the question. So as you know that mobile positioning data, or MPD, it is basically trusted and fact-based data source. So it has potential to be used for producing the official statistics. Looking back our experience in 2016, when the first time we tried to, doing the piloting project on the using the MPD, and also we tried to produce the experimental statistic at that time. So eventually, in the 2020, we officially released our tourism statistics based on the MPD. So it was great success for us for the first time. And of course, that there are some issues in this case. So I would like to, mention a bit more on the challenge, and also what strategy that we try to overcome those issues. So we divided two issues in two parts. The first part is what we call the external issues that which really relates with the national governance. So governance is really important. Getting access to MPD was not easy as we thought initially. However, that we cannot work alone. In this case, we need to bring up the importance of tourism as the priority of our national developments. So by having this idea, we should collaborate with other ministries as well by adopting the approach, what we call the whole of government. Under the national statistical systems, we collaborate more with our main stakeholders. The first ones, we collaborate with the Ministry of Tourism and Creative Economy, which is basically our main stakeholders in the form of the policy-making purposes. And the second one, the Ministry of Communication and Informatics, which are basically responsible for regulating the telecommunication providers. So because there is some issue on the regulations. And the third one is the Ministry of State-Owned Enterprise. One of the telecommunication providers is basically our state-owned enterprise. That is, the business is responsible by the ministry. And the last one, the Ministry of National Development Planning, of course, that is responsible for allocating the budgets. And we need that tourism statistics should be released periodically and sustainability. So this is very important. So that's why the purpose of having these collaborative actions to get, periodic statistical release, and also we try to bring the commitment from the other agencies to get the budget allocations and how the MPD can be accessed by our NSO. So this is very important one. And having the access to MPD is actually, there is some issue also on the privacy, but however that we cannot breach the regulation, and there is a way that somehow technology can help us to avoid the privacy issue. By confidentializing the MPD and also try to store all those MPD inside the secure systems, and by providing the access to NSO, it has helped a lot how we can prevent from the privacy issue. And also the telecommunication provider provides facility to the computing environment for us to compute, to process also the MPD to release the tourism statistics. So another issue, the second part is the more methodology issue. The fact that MPD does not represent all the entire populations of Indonesia, since not all populations is having mobile phone. So in this case, that there is somehow another survey, what we call the survey of the socio-economic, that is able to estimate the proportion of populations using the mobile phones. So by having this one, we can use the weights somehow in the producing the tourism statistics. And of course, that in the methodology, we need also to consider the algorithm and the programming codes. In this case, we have to build by our own, and of course that it has to reflect the tourism concepts, including the origins, destinations, the length of stay, the length of journeys. So by having this one, so we can build such a robust algorithm. But of course, the algorithm should be overseen by the telecommunication provider. In fact, that there is such ongoing discussion previously how that the algorithm should not reflect the breach of the privacy data. So we have to ensure that algorithm on that way. Of course, that having MPD, we really learn and earn lots about the benefits. The first one about the cost effectiveness. Before using the MPD, we just conducted some traditional survey, and it costed a lot. It's around 3 million USD all over Indonesia, because Indonesia is a very big country, and it was a yearly basis. So that means only once a year we produce the tourism statistics. Once we have the MPD, so the cost is about 2 million US dollar for the whole year, and we can produce the outputs in monthly basis. So that means the efficiency about 1/3, 1 million cost efficiency, and of course the output 12 times higher than the previous one. So it is a good that we have, and also the lag time. Considering the lag time, it was like 6 months to 1 year lag time, but using the MPD, we just only 1 week lag time, because just 1 week time to process all those MPD data. And another benefits that MPD can provide individual data granularity. That means that we can estimate on different levels of the region. So it is a good idea. So it depends on how the purpose we use the MPD. And then we try to use MPD not only for the tourism statistic, for multi-purpose activity, like how we use it for the commuter mobility of the people, and also the migration. And also we already conducted what we call metropolitan statistical area, which is how we can estimate the future of our city based on the MPD and also some economic data. Of course, that in conjunction with the sustainability of tourism, BPS Statistics Indonesia already conducted a pilot study about environmental impacts of tourism in marine areas, specifically. The study estimated the generation of solid waste and waste of water of tourism. By having tourism statistics, by using the MPD, we could understand the relationships between the number of visitors in marine areas with the waste produced to the environment. So this is a very good idea to have the MPD right away. So in conclusion, that having understandings about the issues and the strategy to solve the issue, of course, we have to think about the benefits. So I think that other countries may also consider exploring the use MPD for official statistics. Thank you.
No, thanks to you, Imam. So very enlightening summary of a lot of work that has been ongoing for many, many years. So in fact, the collaborative elements, not only on the technical realm, right, conceptually, and also with respect to the computing capacity, but also in terms of budget allocation and in terms of regulation. So very important points. This leads us then to issues of governance and to Ms. Kathrine Lindeskov Johansen, who is in fact currently leading a project to harmonize how tourism's environmental impact actually gets measured in the Nordic countries and align it with internationally agreed standards on that. So Kathrine, you are advancing some really fascinating work. I had the opportunity last week to be there in Sweden with you and the team. You're bringing together different players, integrating different data sources, being very creative with your data sources indeed. Please share with us an overview of this work.
Thank you, Clara, and thank you for the invitation and for having us, or having me, on behalf of the project. All right, so these slides are just kind of to set the scene, to set the context, but thank you for the questions. I think all the motivation behind this project has already been talked about on both on the introduction for this panel and also on the previous panel. Surely things have also been taken place before we embarked on this project that has, that we want to harmonize how to go about it. So the MST framework, we have actually indicators
in Denmark on a wide range. But here on the whole thing about the environmental impact from tourism, we decided to begin with the climate impact or the climate footprint, consumption-based. So based on the tourism consumption on the territory. And combining this with, defined statistical frameworks, the TSA, the accounts of economic and environmental accounts, is the SIA. And also, so that's kind of familiar territory because we knew that, well, we wanted to be harmonized internationally, but also with concepts that we already knew. So I'm just going to briefly talk about how we went about, how should I say it, the way we talk about it. Because in the MST, the guidelines, which is, we like the modular sort of approach, which we have copied into this visualization. So if we first have focus on like the must-haves, what we call them, so the direct effects. My next slide, in due of time, all these boxes will be solid and in color. But this is just to emphasize this first approach. But of course there are other effects, because as also the UN Tourism MST, SF MST puts emphasis on is that well, the direct effects, well, we also need to have like a fuller picture. What about the supply chains? Both for, well, analytical, but also political interest, right? I'm sorry for turning my back to you, but anyway, so of course, we take that with us as another module that you can, that we need to harmonize how we do it. And here also and also with the, of course, then production can happen both domestic and it can happen abroad. So there's imported goods and services to, provide this tourism that's consumption that's consumed within the TSA, which is nicely described. We were very in agreement with the way, the approach here with combining the TSA and the SIA, as I mentioned before, and also combining it with the IO table, input-output tables. Modeling also. But then, of course, when you talk about tourism, then to get a complete picture, a lot of emissions happen when we travel, right? So international transport, we thought, well, if we would need, or when I say we, it's across the Nordics, but we also in Denmark, because that was a choice that we also thought when we went about doing our pilot, we need to have all 4 modules. Now there's a reason why turquoise boxes are also modular. I will come into that, but what we're trying to depict is kind of the TSA consumption and what kind of types of emissions that we wanted to compile in the project. So I should say, yes, we're talking about harmonizing, but we're also talking about compiling. Mm-hmm. So there's different steps here going on at the same time. And before I don't want to give you impression that this has only been carried out for Denmark and Finland, because Norway and Sweden have also done work in previous years and before this project was started with the harmonization. But within this project, within this framework, with these, this methodology, we have done this for Denmark and for Finland. And as I kind of mentioned before, we went full scope, or try to, with the direct, indirect, and the imported flows, and also made a suggestion on how to do the international transport. In Finland, we were able to do the direct and indirect flows. So now I come into why the turquoise was also modular, is because, well, what we found within this harmonization process was also, well, some of the, so this this figure might seem a little weird because there's no axis. And that is because, the numbers are not disseminated yet. And maybe I can get a chance to elaborate on that later on. But so I can only talk about how we went about it and the process, and also how things are looking, with shares. But I can't tell you the levels. And of course, there's a story behind that. But I think this illustrates very nicely that there are different reasons for these modules that are not actually fully comparable yet. And that has to do with how we compile the TSA, how that can be different, and how that sometimes can really impact a lot on the emissions. But we did find these, but it was useful for us. I mean, we did find these key findings that, all right, so how should we go about this? Because again, we have a harmonization aspect, but also we have pilot compilations to make. And so we also discussed about, okay, should we do like a CO2 ready TSA, like a different version, because maybe it's difficult to wait for the TSA to be fully harmonized, and other common challenges that we thought we had on methodology, but also how to, convert guidelines into how do we do this in practice, and data gaps. Okay, sorry. All right, so I will go quickly over this. Sorry, I don't want to, I think I've taken my time slot. What I wanted to tell you about was how we use big data for this part of the project, but we can talk about this in the break. I don't know if I mentioned going in that big data is also used, so this huge project also has another side, which is on improving the regional TSA. Here we use credit card data. Here, for distances, we've used Google Maps. So that was just two major big data sources that I wanted to mention. Okay, just to show you briefly the timeline here, that we actually came out with a report in 2022. So just to give you an idea of also setting the scene for some other topics that I hope to address in the discussion. But just to give you an idea of the timeline here, but we want to compile direct and indirect flows for the rest of the Nordic countries that are ready for linking, meaning that they have a TSA and a CN IOP tables. And then embark on, for the rest of the modules in 2005, and in this year find out, okay, what do we need? What does it take to be on par? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Kathrine. And it is very difficult indeed to talk about something so complex, right, in only 5 minutes. And I do hope perhaps the organizers will indulge us with a few extra minutes, because in principle we only have 10 minutes left. And I do have follow-up questions for each of you. But we move on to Julio López Astor. Julio, you are not only the head of research and knowledge at the Spanish National Tourism Office, which you have been heading for a few years now, but you have also managed different offices of the NTO abroad, including Chicago, Frankfurt, Miami, and Zurich. So this gives you also very valuable perspective from a more user perspective. And of course, you are also our dear co-chair of the UN Tourism Committee on Statistics, in which you represent Spain. And So I know that you are now immersed in a groundbreaking, if you allow me the word, project on measuring residents' attitudes towards tourism, and this topic is of course increasingly recognized. It is very high on the policy agenda, not only from a management perspective, but very much also from a sustainability of tourism perspective. So please go ahead.
Thank you, Clara. I was going to ask you if I had still time to talk, but yeah, it's going to be harder. I tried to do it in 5 minutes. I'm going to try doing 3 minutes. Let's see if I can. Yes, well, already Ms. Manzanera gave us some slides of what the situation is in some destinations. The pandemic is not so far away, but it seems very far away. But during the pandemic, when I took charge of the position I have now, the obsession was to come back to the levels that we had in 2019, because we were suffering. You know, tourism is a big part of the Spanish economy, and we already have heard the numbers for that. But I was always saying, I wish we want to go back to 2019, because there were some problems in 2019 already. In 2023, we surpassed the level of tourism that we had in 2019. We achieved in 2019 83 million tourists, international tourists in Spain. Spain has 48 million inhabitants. In 2023, it was already 85 million. And this year we're growing by 14%, 14.5% already. So it's not something bad in itself. It's good in the sense that we get more revenues from that, and more people come to discover a wonderful country, but there are some problems that might be associated with that. One of them is the effects that this phenomenon may have on the local population of the destinations. Tourism cannot be sustainable if it's not supported by the local population of the destinations where it takes place. It's not sustainable if the visitors are not satisfied with the trip. So these are two aspects of social sustainability that need to be measured in order to take corrective measures and try to improve the situation. We've been measuring, trying to measure visitors' satisfaction for the last 3 years. Believe it or not, we started with this project more than a year and a half ago, but government sometimes works slowly. So we are now at the time that we can put this project into being. Yeah? The project is to, in the framework of MST. MST does not include yet a list of indicators that can be used. So it's mainly about what to measure, but not yet how to measure, in some, especially regarding social sustainability. So we thought it would be good to develop a pilot project to try to design an indicator that should be simple to understand, to explain, and also to implement. So we didn't start from scratch. There's a lot of work done in this area since the mid 2010. So especially for the last 10 years, we did a systematic review of 64 academic literature articles, and we also we did an internal survey of what destinations in Spain were doing. And we got inspired by the work done by the NIT in Kiel in Germany, work that they did in 2019. And we decided that the best way to approach this issue was with a short survey. It should be short in order for it to be affordable. So the survey is actually, the way that we are planning to do it is with a consumer panel. In that way, we save many of the questions that normally are asked in a survey, because most of the socio-demographic information we already have. And we also wanted to, the other reason for using the online panel was they wanted to do it a longitudinal study with 2 data extraction moments. Tourism is very seasonal in Spain, in many destinations in Spain. So we decided to have one way of the survey at the end of August, which is high season for many destinations, and at the beginning of November, which is low season for many destinations. And for those where August is the low season, then it's November is the high season, with the Canary Islands or Madrid are examples of that. In order to find out if these attitudes that we are seeing in one moment are sustained 2 months later, just 2 months later. So, as I say, I don't have a lot of time to go into the details. Just to say, where's the link to big data here? There is a link because, well, the sampling method has been a stratified sampling, where the strata is based on 3 groups of municipalities in Spain with 5,000 or more inhabitants. And these are divided by their tourism intensity in terms of population that is living there according to the census, and the number of tourists in a particular moment in time. We took the month of August in 2003, and for that we used an experimental statistic that INE has. It's actually 2 statistics, one on domestic tourism flows and one international tourism flows based on mobile phones. Without this information, we wouldn't have been able to create this index that allows us to divide all municipalities in Spain into 3 tiers. So we have low intensity, medium intensity, and high intensity. And so we have 13 online interviews in each wave, and they are evenly divided between these three strata. And the question is very simple. It's based on a Likert scale. It's actually a double question, how it affects you personally, tourism, from very negatively to very positively, and how do you think it affects your community where you live. And then we asked for 15 different factors in terms of, are you very in disagreement or very much in agreement with this statement? So tourism creates employment. Tourism creates low wages employment, or tourism crowds my space, or tourism creates opportunities for more leisure. So 15 different factors that can be added over time, but it allows us to see what the relationship is between the attitude and those factors, and we can do that by types of destination. Is it a big city, a small city, a coastal city? By intensity, by big size of the population, etc. I think I exceeded my 3 minutes by far, but it's really hard. I tried. So thank you very much for your patience.
Yes. No, you all are doing such wonderful work, and I realize it's really difficult, the mission I gave you. Now, in principle, we have exceeded our 40 minutes already. I do have follow-up questions for each of you. So if you promise to stick to 1 or 2 minutes each, I will proceed if the audience also indulges us. So Apolonija first, just really concisely, what would you think is the best way to operationalize the use of different data sources structurally in time while still ensuring that alignment internationally?
Today, while listening to these great examples, and also when I was at home and thinking what to say today, is that we have to come together and say how to measure, because now we have the framework. And now, for example, what you are doing in Indonesia, you know, when it comes to mobile positioning data, what we are doing with roaming data, let's come together and what kind of methodologies you have defined, you know, to process the data, what we have done, and try to align our efforts together. Also in Slovenia, we are thinking of like how to measure what the local population thinks about tourism, but we are thinking in another way that you have done. So in order to have, at the end of the day, something comparable, either from surveys, either from MNO data, from smart meters. We have to now bring together the knowledge and say how we will be measuring it, that at the end of the day, the flows that we will be measuring on international flows, Slovenes going outside or foreigners coming, will be the same as measured in Spain, or that the footprint from tourism that we will measure in our region will be the same as in your region. That would be my wish, that we find the strength how to proceed, because nowadays we have already access to alternative data or big data sources, and we have ideas how to measure also the soft parts of MST. But now I think it's the time that we come together and say how, and then we proceed.
Yep.
Otherwise, I think we are losing a little bit the energy and money, and we are everybody exploring something, and at the end of the day, we will not have anything comparable. And the ultimate goal of the MST is to have comparable data at the end that we can compare among each other, and of course, nationally over time. I think this would be my message today.
Yeah, very clear. So structure best practices and move towards a compilation guide in this space. Imam, moving on to you, how exportable do you think Indonesia's success story is to other countries?
Well, I think this is very positive that our experience can be shared to other countries. So, as she mentions, we need, come together. There is a lot of experience, and the methodology also can be shared to other countries. But of course, there is some unique issue within a country. So the one that I explained about the governance, it should be, have some solution by its government, because different country has different government systems. So I think the idea to have the collaboration, partnership between ministry is good idea, because we have limited resources. So by having this kind of integrations of the data, integration of the policy, and then we can come up with a very good solution for the using the big data.
Indeed. So now moving on perhaps more to a more analytical and user perspective, Kathrine. Now, you're working in a space that may elicit a lot of emotions, right? Both in the in the policy sphere, but also in the general public. How do you manage to be a first mover in this space that can be, so complicated, not only technically, but very much also in terms of that more political element?
Yes, it's very, thank you. It's very, it is challenging. I mean, and for being a first mover, yes, in some aspects, because now we're done, but it's not disseminated yet. So are we? So yes, there's so many things, and I'd like to also, as a comment to your comments, is that, well, here we have all this goodwill in the Nordics. We all want to do it. And we had have this project, we still have it. But that's why I showed you the timeline. So there seems to be something happening. So all this goodwill into going into harmonizing and compiling and being, dare to be somewhat experimental, because on the international transport, that's pretty open methodology. Wise. So in a sense, yes, we are going out on a limb here, and we would love to have other colleagues come and comment, and so we can improve together, because we are also in the very same motivation by, okay, let's it's these so international comparable statistics is such an imperative for this, global intervention on climate and tourism. And so, we all know that time is of the essence. So let's get to do it. Let's get on with it, right? But I think something that was also addressed in the first session about resource and NSIs is an issue, but you can talk in the Danish, you'd say, you know, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? And there's also, because of these scarce resources to NSIs, there's also more and more pressure for, well, they have focused more and more on what's mandatory and what's legislated upon. And we have all these measurements, as I just briefly summarized, but this about tourism and the climate footprint is not part of it. So, I mean, it seems paradox that I would ask for more legislation as a practitioner, but still I think it helps us justify that we choose to go ahead with this. So I think there's a various, parallel tracks here. So I'd like to mention that. And then about the actionable results and how it's perceived by the public, I think it is challenging, not only from tourism consumption, but just consumption in general, when the dialogue is passed on to our behavior as consumers. Because, and it arises other political issues also, because that was also addressed previously today. Because, all right, so who is to blame in citation? But who has the resources to change behavior? Of course, over-tourism is not what anyone wants, but to travel and to meet people and to go long distances, who gets not to do it? And I mean, we all came today for this, but we came for a reason. Of course, there's something about human contact. So it's very difficult in the perception and also, I think going into this and the motivation for finding and compiling the statistics is very broad. We have like politicians on all local government levels and state levels and everything. But now that we have the numbers, what do we do with them?
Yeah. What do we do with them, Julio? You're more used to operating in this space.
Yeah, well, first we have to get the numbers right. So that's one very important point, because we have already seen the discrepancies among many of the numbers that we're using. So it's very crucial to have data that is comparable, that is a standard, and that we can, even if it's not perfect, we can see the evolution over time, because the policy needs to really take corrective measures. And in this case, sustainability will not be demand-driven and will not be supply-driven. It's going to be regulatory-driven, so government-driven. It's pretty clear. We have already did some surveys, and we are not the only ones that have seen that from the point of view of the demand, it's not yet internalized completely, that they should make sustainable choices when they travel. It's more ingrained in their normal daily life than when they travel. And they are not going to be deterred by overcrowded destinations. We have already seen that. We have even seen that in the Himalayas, in the Mount Everest. So we need to have relevant, reliable, and comparable data in order for policy to take corrective measures. And these measures are essential. I mean, they are not optional. If we don't make tourism sustainable, we are ruining a main source of income at least for our destination. There are some regions in Spain that are not in the Canary Islands or the Balearic Islands cannot survive without tourism. Yeah. So it's really crucial.
So as most of us in this room are in fact visitors and contributing to tourism activities, we are all warned that regulation is coming up. So we're coming to a close now. We've heard many important messages, but perhaps picking up on one, in fact, from Apolonija and the rest of the group, is that you're all working in the implementation space, right? So we have now a new framework that conceptually aligns us, right, in terms of definitions and data organization structures. Now we actually need to make it happen also in practice. And ultimately, the proof of the pudding is in its eating, right? So a round of applause to our wonderful speakers.